Missouri has been really going all out for a while on all the anti-trans bills. They introduced like a huge number of anti-trans bills at the beginning of this season. They hear like the maximum number of trans bills they can at any given time. Just lots of crazy stuff happening in Missouri at the state level. We do know trans cat dad who lives in like Columbia, Missouri, got them to pass a safe haven protection for trans people in that city. So individual places in Missouri can be okay. But overall, as a state, boy howdy, they need some work. You got to calm down. So this most recent thing is a bill that's proposed which would make teachers have to go on the sex offenders registry if they were found to be supporting trans students in their social transition. Now, I do believe that Missouri has made child transition illegal, basically. Unless they were grandfathered in, I guess. You cannot literally make it illegal for a child to socially transition. Like, you cannot make it literally illegal for them to cut their hair or request a different name. But what you can do is call teachers sex offenders for supporting this social transition thing, which just seems kind of crazy. Charging teachers and counselors with a felony, requiring them to register as sex offenders if they're found guilty of supporting trans students who are socially transitioning. Bill introduced by Representative Jamie Gregg. If passed and signed into law, this legislation would criminalize the act of, quote, contributing to social transition for anyone acting in an official capacity at their school, including providing informational or material support. So I think, I don't know, maybe even referring you to something that's a supportive material could be considered supporting the social transition and therefore a felony. Like a felony. That's crazy. The bill defines social transitioning as, quote, the process by which an individual adopts the name, pronouns, and gender expression, such as clothing or haircuts, that match the individual's gender identity and not the gender assumed by the individual's sex at birth. I think that ultimately what this is going to do, it is going to prevent teachers from being able to use any nickname just in case it is accidentally socially transition support. No pronoun changes, gender expressions such as clothing or haircuts. Does that mean that a girl can't get a pixie cut, like a short haircut? Are girls going to be not allowed to wear pants? Like, where are the lines here? Does it go into detail? I don't know. I haven't read the actual law, but if I would guess that it did not go into any further detail than what is explicitly put here. So just generally speaking, clothing or haircuts that match the opposite gender are not allowed. Oh, so this also could include jail time. In Missouri, a person charged with a Class E felony can face a maximum of 4 years in prison. A Tier 1 sex offender could also remain on the sex offender registry for up to 15 years. Wow, I just like, I almost feel like I don't know what to say. Like, I cannot imagine, like, how can you justify it being a sex crime? What are other crimes that are at the same level of punishment? I would have to look into it, like what currently constitutes something worthy of putting you on the sex offender registry in the state of Missouri. Because it seems like you shouldn't be saying, okay, calling a kid by the name that they've requested is equivalent to crimes such as actually physically harming a child sexually. Like they're putting those on the same category. Like, you have to be on a public list that people can check and be like, ooh, does a sex offender live near me? For calling a kid by the name that they've asked you to call them. If you're enjoying this video, hit the like button, maybe subscribe, hit all notifications if you want. Feel free to check out the links in the description. You might find some merch you like, or you can hit up the Patreon to support the content and find free stuff. This is going to result in a teacher shortage. There's no way in hell people would want to teach there. I mean, honestly, I do think that's maybe not intentional in this case. I do think there are parts of this that are intentionally ruining schools, right? Like when you open up schools to lawsuits for this kind of liability, like, oh, you let a trans girl use the same bathroom as my cisgender girl child, like I'm now going to sue you for $100,000. Like, that's a way of indirectly defunding the schools. So I don't know that they're purposefully trying to create an environment that is hostile to their employees, but they are in effect creating an environment that is toxic for their employees. Like, seriously, imagine being worried that you cannot even have a conversation with a kid about supportive concept about gender, because this also does restrict the teaching. Like, I'm sure that this is also going to restrict the teaching, because in order to avoid being seen as positively supporting transition, like, I don't know if it's going to extend that far out to a whole don't say gay thing. I wouldn't be surprised, but maybe this one is a little bit more limited in its scope. Oh yeah, and it would end those teachers' careers effectively. That's true, for sure. If you got put on the sex offender registry for this, that's good luck ever getting a job teaching again. And these are the people who are saying stuff about like the death of the tomboy. Oh, little girls can't even be tomboys anymore without you assuming that they're trans. And bills like this would literally prevent kids from being able to like cut their hair. Be like, oh, you look too tomboyish, and if a teacher is expressing any support of that, then that's a problem. And you can't compliment a kid's haircut. You literally cannot compliment kids' haircuts, because it might be construed as you complimenting them making a gender expression change on their bodies. Someone said in a statement to CNN that they think that this bill is going to die in committee hearings, but points out that it is increasingly alarming to watch extremist state legislators peddle anti-trans hate and continue to introduce discriminatory policies. Right, because even if this bill doesn't pass, even if none of these bills restricting trans access to public life pass, like, even if none of them pass, there will still be more anti-trans rhetoric afterwards, because even if you didn't pass it, you did successfully push the Overton window further over to say it's acceptable to go after trans people like this. Oh, that's true. Yeah, I mean, some homophobe or transphobe could lie and say that you did something you didn't and get you into legal trouble with this. So yeah, just gradually more and more and more targeting of not just trans people in general, but children who don't have the resources that they need to like be happy and healthy. And for a lot of these kids, their only resource is the teacher at school. I've asked this of my chat before. How many people here had like an English teacher or an art teacher or maybe a history teacher who was your queer safe person? Like, maybe they weren't queer, but they were the person that you went to knowing that they were safe. It seems like it's always an English teacher or an art teacher, but you're taking away from kids the one thing. It's been shown that if trans youth have a higher rate of suicidal ideation or self-harm, that risk is reduced dramatically by having just one person in their lives who are affirming their name and pronouns. Literally one person. It changes by like at least a 10-point amount. Like, I think that the reduction in suicidal ideation and behaviors when a kid has one supportive person, I think it drops by like at least 10%. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it might even be bigger than that. I'm hedging a little bit. I'm being conservative, that the suicidal risk drops by a lot. One person. That's it. Law professor, English teacher, art teacher. And yeah, for kids with parents who aren't supportive, with families who aren't supportive, having a teacher there can make a big difference. And here's the other thing. What if the parents want the school to affirm the social transition? This is taking choice away from parents about how they want their children to be raised and addressed and taught in the schools. I can't believe it took me this long to realize that just covering this, but it seriously, what about the parents who say, I want you to call my kid by a different name. I want you to use different pronouns. Those parents just can't send their kids to public school. It's that conservative thing where in some places they're saying, we want to make sure that we're protecting the rights of parents to decide that their kids, should not have to be called these different pronouns, or shouldn't be called these different pronouns because the parents don't want. And then in this other situation, it's like, we don't give a shit what the parents want. We're taking away your right to have your kid affirmed at school, basically. And there's an urge to say that's inconsistent or hypocritical, but it's not, because they're consistent on the fact that they hate trans people and they think being cisgender is good. And they will be hypocritical about who gets to do what, when, where, and how in order to be consistent on that goal of wanting to like dramatically reduce the rate of trans people in society. Like, it would surprise me a lot if there was there can't be an exception to a sex crime Like, they're making it a sex crime to call a kid by the wrong pronoun, or like, according to them, the wrong pronoun. So yeah, there's no way you can, there's no exceptions to that. They can't be like, unless the parent wants us to. It's point blank period. They're turning it into a sex crime. Yeah, they don't actually care about individual rights. They just want to impose their worldview on everyone. Christian supremacists, cis supremacists, white supremacists, like, they just clearly put some people on a higher echelon. Much love to my patrons, especially Tiago Nascimento, Mersh Rolvog, Michelle Frateroli, Amanda B, Wellington Marcus, Michelle Winter, Danielle McDonald, DZXN, Suzanne Maynard, Spooky Heather Sylvia, Jamie Jam, Pasnell Infinity, Nova, Sojo, Elizabeth Bartell, Ella V Nobody, Kevin Young, Sarah A, Athiet, Celeste, Desi Quiche, Liam Hodgson, and Mr. Atheist.